present in every atom. O hidden light, shining in every creature. O hidden love, embracing all in oneness. May each who feels himself as one with thee know he is also one with every other. ओम शांत शांत। आप सभी का दिल्ली शंकर लॉज की मीटिंग में बहुत बहुत स्वागत है। आज हमारे बीच विभा सक्सेना जी हैं। वी वेलकम सिस्टर विभा सक्सेना। विभा सक्सेना जी आज प्रैक्टिकल थियोसफी सब्जेक्ट पर अपने थॉट्स हमारे साथ शेयर करेंगी। सिस्टर विभा सक्सेना जी का होम टाउन वैसे तो पुणे है, मगर वर्तमान में वे नोएडा में रह रही हैं। विभा जी ने पुणे यूनिवर्सिटी से बीई तथा एमटेक कंप्यूटर साइंस जवाहरलाल नेहरू यूनिवर्सिटी न्यू दिल्ली से किया है और बहुत सारी मल्टीनेशनल कंपनीज में आईटी कंसल्टेंट हैं और सॉफ्टवेयर डेवलपमेंट भी देखती हैं, उसका भी कंसल्टेशन करती हैं। विभा जी नोएडा लॉज की सेक्रेटरी और टीओएस दिल्ली रीजन की प्रेसिडेंट भी हैं। अब अधिक समय न लेते हुए मैं सिस्टर विभा सक्सेना जी को आग्रह करूंगा कि वे
नमस्ते भाई जी।
विचार हम लोगों के साथ शेयर करें। नमस्कार विभा सक्सेना जी।
Thank you, brother Rajiv ji, and I really thank brother Rajiv Mathur and Dr. Rajiv Gupta for giving me this opportunity to share my thoughts with you today. So I think without any further, that was really quite an elaborate introduction. So thank you for that. मेरी टॉक इंग्लिश में रहेगी। आई फील इजी अपने आइडियाज एक्सप्रेस करने के लिए, मगर उसके बाद में हम अपने क्वेश्चन आंसर्स हिंदी में कर सकते हैं। दैट इज नॉट अ प्रॉब्लम। सो आवर टॉपिक टुडे इज प्रैक्टिकल थियोसॉफी. We study all these theosophic teachings that have been given to us. It's a very broad spectrum of teachings that we are studying. We have in the secret doctrine the anthropogenesis, the cosmogenesis, and so many teachings given by the other theosophists, Dr. Annie Besant, C.W. Leadbeater. We must ask ourselves what these teachings mean to us in our daily life, in our daily action, or is it only a textbook study? Does this, whatever we learn, whatever we study, does it influence our outlook towards life? This knowledge of occult doctrines and the divine wisdom, does it become an inspiration in our daily actions? That is the question which each one of us has to ask our own self. Now, if we look at practical theosophy, we can look at two aspects of it: how we can apply it to our own life and how we can apply it to serve others. So now let us look at it. What is this application of the theosophic teachings in our life? Annie Besant has mentioned in her book, The Theosophic Life, that a person who knows, knowing meaning whatever we have been studying in the theosophic teachings. So a person who knows and does not act, he is committing a greater wrong than the one who does not know, and so he does not act. So we can see action is so important. We have this advantage of this treasure of knowledge which has been given to us. So our doing, it ought to be better than the doings of others who do not know yet. And unless we apply theosophy practically in our life, the lesser we profess ourselves to be theosophists, the better it is. This was Annie Besant's view. Okay, unless we don't apply the theosophic teachings in our life, we are not true theosophists. Which means that just by joining the Theosophical Society, we do not become theosophist. To be a true theosophist, we must live a theosophic life. So how to live a theosophic life? Let us see that. Based on the knowledge of these two great doctrines which are taught in theosophy, reincarnation and karma. So let me begin by focusing on these two doctrines, what it means to live a theosophic life. When we consider reincarnation, the real man, that is the higher immortal triad, are Atma, Buddhi, Manas. So this higher self it takes for itself the vehicle of personality, which is the lower mortal quaternary, Kam, Pran, Ling Sharir, and Sthul Sharir. And in every incarnation, the personality is created anew. So this is what we understand by reincarnation. And a true understanding of reincarnation, it should inculcate in us the qualities of patience, strength. Why? Because the real man is immortal. He takes these successive temporary personalities. So even though there may be a failure today, there will be rise of success tomorrow. This knowledge of immortality of the self, this is what brings a calmness and serenity in life. There is no hurry. We must not be stressed or agitated. And calmness comes from this fact. It comes from the fact of knowing that failures are temporary. The real man is steadily progressing in every incarnation. So we should realize. Now, this was about the temporariness of the personality, but the immortality of the self. Another point which we must understand from reincarnation is that the people who come in our life, some we call friends, some we think of them as enemies. But what is a friend? What is an enemy? Friends are, they are people from our past. They come from our past. It is this immortality of love. There exists a mutual bond of affinity with people, with someone in the past. And these bonds of real love, they transcend time. So the bond can be anything. It can be the bond between mother and child, between spouse, or between two friends, or between a guru and shishya, between anybody, just anybody. But if it is real, true, altruistic, then this mutual affinity, that bond which is generated, it transcends time. And the higher self, which is immortal, it realizes and it is attracted by this bond, and therefore it appears in our life as a friend by taking on the personality when it is incarnated. Very beautifully, Annie Besant has put it in a poetic language that it is the spirit calling out to spirit across this blinding wheel of matter. And we must see all our friends in this light. So also, just like friends are there, there are people whom we think they are enemy, but are they really enemy? There is no man who is our enemy. It is someone we wronged in the past, or someone to whom we owe some karmic debt, and they have just come forward to claim it. So this payment of our debt that we owe to them, it sets us free. It sets us free from that karmic bond, which is being carried over from one incarnation to the next. And once we are free of it, then we are liberated. So he is not our enemy. He is actually a liberator. uh, Through this doctrine of reincarnation, it is in this light that we should interact with people who seem to us friends or who seem to us enemies. Then, another point that we must understand from this doctrine of reincarnation and apply in our life, it is about the circumstances which come into our life, the circumstances into which we incarnate. Somebody is born poor, somebody is born rich, somebody is born in luxury, somebody is born in misery. The circumstances which are surrounding us, they are exactly the best which are required for our growth and evolution at this point in time. So it is very important to understand that these are the best circumstances for our growth and evolution at this particular point in time. And they are required for the next step on the upward path. See, we said that the higher self, it is continuously growing, unfolding, incarnation after incarnation. So on this upward path, this is the best step right now. The moment we are ready to move forward, the path for the next step will open up. Now these circumstances around us which are there, they are always, they come as our teacher. They come there to bring about some quality which we are lacking, which is not there in us. See, personality has to grow. The higher self has to unfold. So something which we are lacking, which we don't have, this is what these circumstances bring about in us. They give us an opportunity to bring that quality and also to remove the undesirable qualities. So let me give an example. Like suppose we have a very difficult person in our life. Say in our office, one new colleague comes or a new boss comes. He's very difficult, making our life difficult. Or we can have somebody in the family who's not a with whom we are not getting along with, or it could be a friend or a neighbor, just about anybody. Now these people, they enter our life so that we learn something. Perhaps we have to learn the virtue of patience. Perhaps we have to learn to control our anger. So once we learn our lesson, then maybe this person just moves out of our life. Maybe circumstances change. So every circumstance, every person who comes into our life has come to teach us some lesson. We have to learn that lesson and move forward. We need not crib or cry. We need not compare ourselves to others. We need not be jealous of our situation with respect to others. So this is what we need to do to put this lesson of theosophy into practice. The teachings that we are studying, they must bring in our life a contentment. They must bring in us abundance of patience. We have to observe ourselves in our daily life, in the day-to-day life. In the morning when we wake up, we are getting ready to go to send the children to school or perhaps to go to office. Are we exercising patience? Do we have tolerance? Are we comfortable with everything around us? That is what is putting theosophy into practice in everyday life. And we should go along with this flow of life cheerfully. The circumstances and environment, they will gradually change. They will modify themselves. Now, another point which reincarnation, which we know through this doctrine is, we already said that soul grows reincarnation after reincarnation. That is, soul actually unfolds. So each one of us, everybody whom we see in our life, family, friends, acquaintance, social circle, they are on a different rung of the ladder of evolution, right? So this life is a ladder of evolution and everyone is at a different step. So we should stop judging others. We should stop trying to reform other people, thinking that yes, because I have studied theosophy, so I know best and I can tell you do this or do that. No, we should stop judging others. We need to choose our own path according to our knowledge and our conscience, what we think, what we know to be right. And we should let others choose theirs. So we are actually a lifelong learner. Learning never stops. And we have to learn from every situation, from every person that comes into our life. Okay. Now, this was one of the major doctrine, the most important doctrine of reincarnation, which theosophy has taught us. Although our scriptures also say the same thing. Now coming to the next doctrine, that is karma. How do we apply the doctrine based on karma in our daily life? First and foremost, we have to remember that law of karma, it is not fatalism. It allows us to create our own destiny. So karma is a continuous creation. Every day, every act is modifying the results of our past karma. How do we create karma? We create it at all levels: physical, astral, mental, through our thoughts at the mental level, through our desires and feelings on the astral level, and through our physical actions on the physical plane. What are the effects that are generated of these? The theosophic literature teaches us that our thoughts, they make our character. What we think, so we are. So thoughts, they make our character. Our desires, they bring us the corresponding opportunities. Whatever thing you will ardently desire, you will definitely get the opportunity, maybe in this life, maybe in the next, maybe now, maybe later. But the opportunity will definitely come. And our actions are the ones which determine our environment. How we behave, how we deal with others, how we talk. So that is exactly what will come back to us. People will also behave in the same way to us. So it determines our circumstances, our environment. So how should we behave now in happy times or in the not so happy times? That means when when we are sad, happy and sad, two situations in life. How should we behave? Now, happiness has always to be shared with everyone. See, we are looking at how to apply theosophy practically in our life. And these are the circumstances which come. So, what do we understand by karma? That in happiness, see, the happiness might have come to you due to your good karma, agreed. But happiness has to be shared with all. So, make somebody else happy. Share your happiness with someone else. And when the times are not so good, times of sadness or difficult times, those conditions, when they are tough, we have to endure them cheerfully by ourselves, having this full confidence in the law of reincarnation and karma that situations change. Nothing endures forever. So we have to undergo these situations cheerfully. And once we have learnt our lesson, whatever lesson they have come to teach us, you will find that the situation changes. We move on. So, from these two doctrines of reincarnation and karma, we have first to understand and apply them in our daily life by constant observation of our thoughts and feelings and physical action. So, moving ahead, let us see what the Theosophic Masters has said. There, they have given us practical instructions to those who knock. Who are the ones who knock? It is we. We are the ones who are knocking at the door of the Master to be guided on the spiritual path by them. And they have given us these teachings in which they tell us 4 qualifications which we must put into practice in our daily life. So these teachings were actually given to J. Krishnamurti by the masters when they were preparing him for initiation. And they are practical instructions which apply to everybody, even to us. I'm sure most of you know it. It is a very beautiful book, At the Feet of the Master, which all of you must have studied. And in that, the masters have asked us to develop these 4 qualifications, which is discrimination, desirelessness, good conduct, and love. So we won't go into the detail and depth of each of this qualification, but I would like to add a few points in this, what we need to do practically in our life. And if you compare this with our scriptures, this is the same as Sadhan Chatushtya. Sadhan Chatushtya are the ways in which you can walk on the spiritual path. You need to develop Vivek, Vairagya, Shat Sampatti, and Mukshatva. That is exactly what is mentioned in this, the 4 qualifications in the At the Feet of the Master. So discrimination we understand as Vivek. It is the discernment between real and unreal. Real is that which is eternal. It is immortal and everlasting. And unreal, that is temporary, transient, and passing. So to that extent, universe is called unreal because it is temporary, transient, and passing. Therefore, we must see that what is worth striving after and what is not. Okay, we in this personality we have a limited period of time of life, right? So what is worth doing? Spend the time judiciously and never judge the work by its size. A small thing which is directly useful in the work of the master, it is far better worth than doing a large thing which the world may think is good but may not be directly useful in the master's work. So however small work you may be doing, if it helps the master's work, it is worth doing it. And we need to be constantly aware. See now, this law of reincarnation. So we have a limited period of time in this personality. Let us make the best use of it. Use this discrimination to understand what is worth doing. Okay. We should also discriminate what is more useful and what is less useful. The master says that to feed the poor is good and useful, yet to feed their soul is more useful than to feed their bodies. What does this mean? That any rich man can give food to the poor. Any rich man can feed the body. But only those who know, they can feed the soul. Right? So it is your duty that if you know, you should help others know. And this is what the masters have said in this At the Feet of the Master. Therefore, see, if you know, it is your duty to help others know. But for you to know, You have to study first, right? That is why I see the three pillars of theosophy are study, meditation, service. The first pillar is study. So you must study. First, study that which will enable you to help others the most. That is what we should study first. Because only the wise man can be wisely helpful to the others. If you yourself are ignorant, you may do more harm than good. So you have to study that first, which will help you to help others. Next, learn to think for yourself. See, again, I'm repeating, we are looking at how to apply things in our life practically. So when we say study meditation service, study that which will help you to help others. When you think by yourself. Don't blindly believe what someone else is saying. Think the matter yourself, judge it for yourself, be reasonable, exercise your higher mind or exercise your intuition, and then take decisions. So, thinking for yourself, it is most important. Most of us go by the general opinion. Okay, that should not be the case. Next, we come to speech. Be true in speech, be accurate and without exaggeration. And next is action. So, action, never pretend to be anything other than you are. Your action should also be truthful. What we have seen, study, thought, speech, and action. Think for yourself. Speech should be accurate without exaggeration, and action should be true. No pretense. So these are the things when we say that the first qualification on the path is discrimination, we must understand that to apply it to ourselves, we have to observe these things and implement it in our life. Okay, so that was about discrimination. The next qualification was desirelessness. So we have seen what is real, what is unreal. We understand that we should not desire that which is temporary and passing. We must strive after what is real. Desiring anything becomes a bond, it binds us. Whether it is a lower desire of this world or even if it is a higher desire of the higher world, it will still generate a a bound, huh? You will be binded to that karma. So example, people think that okay, we have transcended the worldly desires, but still they may have this desire of the higher world. They want to see how far they have progressed on the path. They desire to see the result of their good work which they are doing. So these are also desires which we need to transcend. We must do right for the sake of right, not for the sake of reward. That is very well known. It is said in the Bhagavad Gita also, that karm karo or fal ki chinta mujh pe chhod do. So do work for the sake of work, for the sake of duty, not for its fruit. At the same time, as we will progress on the spiritual path, it is accompanied with unfoldment of consciousness and unfoldment of power. They come by themselves when we are ready. So we should have no desire for psychic power. Forcibly, we need not work that to develop our psychic powers. They will come to us when the master knows that it is best for us to have them. So we should not run after or have that as the motive of our study to develop psychic powers. Then also in desire, we should not have this desire for name and fame. Whatever good work we are doing, the service we are doing, or any help that we are rendering. So we want ourselves to be known. We want that our name and fame, it is known to all. This is the desire to shine. Even that we have to remove from ourselves. So this constant observation of ourselves. What is desirelessness? Am I cultivating desirelessness in myself? Okay. Also, when we speak, so for speaking, there is a very good triple filter test. It is said that when you want to speak something, first you must examine it carefully and apply this triple filter test. What you want to say, is it true? Is it kind? And is it going to be helpful to someone? If not, then don't say it. So that is why speak less and think before you speak. If we are if we want to be theosophists, if we want to apply these teachings in our life, then these are the things which we have to observe and implement in our life. Now, we have seen these first two qualifications, which was desirelessness and discrimination. Now, the third one is mentioned as good conduct, which corresponds to Shat Sampatti. Good conduct is developing the control of mind, the control of the senses, action, tolerance, cheerfulness, one-pointedness, and confidence. So, most of us, we know what is this good conduct, what are the qualities which we need to cultivate in ourselves. So, we won't go into details of that. We will move to the last qualification, which is love. When we speak of love here, in my studies of theosophy, I have come across these two words very often: developing the will and developing love, because these are the two real forces. They are real forces. Like if you look at electricity, if you look at magnetism, you can actually measure these forces, right? They are real physical forces. Similarly, the force of love, the force of will, they are real forces. You may not be able to measure them on the physical plane, but on the higher planes, they are actual forces. So this comes repeatedly again and again. We just saw in the previous slide that the bonds of love, they transcend time, because once that force of love is generated, it will remain in the terrestrial plane. Okay, so similarly, coming to this last qualification of love, this is the will to become one with God. Now, see, God actually in theosophy is explained as an abstract principle, the boundless, immutable all. Okay, but just for the sake of understanding this last qualification, love is the will to become one with God. And the creator is not different from his creation. So, what is God? God is his creation. To become one with God means to love his creation. Yearning to be one with God, not for your own sake, but so that we can become a channel through which his love can flow and reach his creation, that is, the fellow men, and all the rest of the kingdoms also. So, that is what is love. It is corresponding to mumukshatva in sadhana chatushtya, the ardent desire, which is will to become one with God. So, are we cultivating that in ourselves? Okay. So, from at the feet of the master, when we look at the four qualifications, we have to observe our life and implement those qualities in us steadily and progressively. Then we also said that there are three cornerstones of, or rather, three pillars of theosophy, which is study, meditation, and service. Theosophy emphasizes that we can gain the knowledge of the real through means of a holistic spiritual practice, and that includes study, meditation, and service. Study and meditation, we know, we have seen about study, and now let us look at this third pillar, that is service. So theosophic life, it has to be a life of service. And in context of this, I would also like to talk about the 5 duties of man as they are enumerated in the Sanatan Dharma. I will talk about it a little further. First, let us understand this theosophic life of service. So when we serve our nearest neighbor or the man who is closest to us, we are actually serving the human race. Right? See, we said don't judge a work by its size. Okay. So even a single man whom we are serving, it amounts to serving the human race. If we cannot do great things, it's okay. Let us do small things, but they need to be done with perfection. And because importance of service, it is not in the size, but in the act, in that perfection, in that detail with which we do the service. For example, say I go out every morning, I go out to walk, and in my society there are many elderly people who are staying here, because as you know, most of the children, they study and then they get a job in US and they move over. Their parents are alone over here. So I come across a lot of neighbors who are alone. Now, if I just stop and I talk to one of them, especially in these corona times, it was very difficult. So if I just stop, talk to them and ask them, do you need something? Can I get you something from the market? That is sufficient for them. That is a big service for them because they feel loved, they feel wanted, they feel cared for. So this is a very small act, just going on your morning walk, but speaking to your neighbor who may be lonely. So don't, if you cannot do great things, it's okay. Small things with perfection. That is what you should look for. So service is any act which will alleviate the misery of the people. Alleviate meaning it will make it less or it will remove the misery of the people. Whether it is at physical level or whether it is at mental level. So you just need to work for removing this misery of the people. Now coming to duty. We think of doing service. Now what is our duty? The objective of doing our duty is not to attain personal happiness. It comes anyway. If you do your duty, you feel happy, right? But it is for happiness of others. Once we do our duty, this happiness and contentment, it will come and it looks like it is a reward. When you do your duty, it comes to you as your reward. But we must not look for reward. That should not be the motive of doing our duty. Our only motive for doing the duty is do right for the sake of right, not for the sake of reward. And in her book, The Key to Theosophy, HPB has described what is duty. She says, duty is that which is our due or our obligation to humanity, to our fellow men, the neighbors, the family, and especially what we owe to those people who are more poorer and helpless than we are. So now with this regard, I would like to bring your attention back to the duties of man which are given in our Ved. Here HPB mentioned that duty is that which we owe to humanity. Going a step further, let us have a look. These duties which are mentioned in the Ved, what are they? All of us have some knowledge about Ved, that is our culture, that is our tradition, that is our dharma, the Sanatan Dharma. There are 4 Veds we know, the Rig Ved, Sam Ved, Yajur Ved and Athar Ved. And in each Ved there are these 4 subdivisions which are the Sanhita, the Brahman, the Aranyak and the Upanishad. Right? So in this Aranyak, in the Taittiriya Aranyak of Yajur Ved, these 5 duties of the householder or of the average man, they are mentioned. And the 5 duties which are mentioned in that, the first one is Brahma Yagya, the second is Dev Yagya, the third is Pitri Yagya, the fourth is Atithi or Manushya Yagya, and the fifth one is Bhut Yagya. Briefly, I just want to tell you what our scriptures say about these 5 duties. The first duty, which is Brahma Yagya, it means to study the sacred books, to study the ancient wisdom, to study the wisdom teachings, not for our own moksha or for our own liberation, but to teach those who do not know. And this is exactly what Theosophy has mentioned. First you study and then help those who do not know. If you know, it is your duty to help those who do not know. And that is the same thing that this Brahma Yagya, what we are talking about, says. Study the sacred books and teach those who do not know. All study should be a sacrifice. That is why it is called Yagya, Brahma Yagya. So all study should be a sacrifice, learning in order that we may teach. The second duty that has been enumerated in this Aranyak is Dev Yagya. Now, if I would like to recall over here, very recently I was in a session where we discussed about the hierarchy of the universe. Universe is made of beings, and the lesser beings have their home in a higher being. And in this hierarchy, we have seen that the human kingdom, above the human kingdom, there are the kingdom of the Dhyanis, the Dhyani Chauhan. They are higher in evolution than us. And below the human kingdom, we have the animal, plant, and mineral kingdom, which is lower in evolution than the humans, and below them we have the kingdom of the elementals, which cannot be seen and are even lower in evolution. So when we are speaking of the second duty of man, the Dev Yagya, what does it say? It involves the Havan or Agnihotra. It is acknowledging everything that we owe to the higher active divine intelligences working in nature. And it symbolizes the realization of our relationship and interdependence with these super physical worlds. So I was actually very happy, surprised, everything put together, that these scriptures are teaching us not only our duty to human beings, that is our own kingdom, but also to this entire hierarchy in the universe, where there is no single isolated being or part. We are all interconnected. So we need to do our duty to all. That is what this Dev Yagya is about. The Havan, which is done for the active divine intelligences of, of nature. Now, the third yagya which is mentioned, that is the Pitri Yagya. I'm sure most of us know this. It symbolizes the recognition of the debt which we owe to our ancestors. And it is done through Shraddha and Tarpan. The fourth yagya, the fourth duty that is mentioned is Atithi Yagya or Manushya Yagya. So this is where we come to serving humanity, feeding the hungry, clothing the naked, sheltering the homeless, and comforting the sad. Why is it called Atithi Yagya? So, see, Atithi, he is like a guest, an unexpected guest. We have not planned it. And in the ancient days, there would be these sannyasis, these scholars who would roam around from one place to the other. They would be preaching this knowledge for the good of all mankind. So, they would visit any household without any prior information of that, the owner of the house. And it was the duty of that householder to offer them food, water, clothes, rest, shelter, whatever they needed. So from that is where from this saying has come, Atithi Devo Bhava. But okay, I'm talking about in the days of the old, but that still applies. Atithi Yagya is Manushya Yagya, to help and serve humanity. And the fourth duty or the fourth Yagya is called Bhut Yagya. So this Bhut Yagya, it is our duty to care for those who are lower in evolution than us. So that will involve the animals, the birds, the plants, also the elementals. So we have seen that these five duties, they are helping us to serve all the kingdoms which are there in this earth chain, all the hierarchies. So this was what I wanted to point out uh, with respect to when we speak of service towards humanity. Now let us come back to practical theosophy, action. Practical theosophy is all about enforced action instead of mere intention. My intentions might be very good, but unless I don't put them into action, they are of no use. So just by professing a truth, it does not become enactment of that truth. Okay, so anybody who does not set or model his life upon whatever he is learning, the truths that he is knowing, he is not a true theosophist. He's just merely a textbook learner. And we mentioned earlier that duty is that which we owe to humanity, our fellow beings and neighbors and family. So the question is, what do we owe to humanity? And HPB has mentioned that we owe the full recognition of equal rights and privileges for all of humanity without any distinction of race, color, social position, or birth. Right? To recognize the equal rights and privileges with no distinction at all. So, in line with this is the work being done by the Theosophical Order of Service. The theme for this year, I'm sure many of you might be knowing, the theme for this year taken up by TOS India, that is the empowerment of women for equal rights and privileges for the girl child. And across India, we have so many TOS groups. Now see, TOS groups are not different from the people of Theosophical Society. It is they who form these TOS groups. And they are working for the same, for educating the girl child, for women, preventing harassment at the workplace, imparting vocational training to women so that they can become financially independent, then organizing and supporting women's self-defense and awareness programs. So a lot of work is being done in this regard. Now, when this I was just talking about the work being currently done through the TOS groups, because this is the theme for the current year. Now, when we talk about this right of equal privilege, if this privilege is violated, whether it is violated for a man or for a nation, then there is a failure. It is a failure in our duty. When political systems are built on this failed duty, when they have disregarded the rights of men and nations, when they have built their political systems by being selfish, whether it is national selfish, social selfishness, or any other type of selfishness, this is what leads to global strife. The friction between men and men, the friction between nation and nation, it happens solely because underlying that there is a disregard for the rights, either of men or of communities and nations. So these are very important things which we need to implement in our life, because every drop in the ocean counts. When we implement it for individual people, it grows to community, it grows to nation, and then it grows to the whole world. So theosophy and politics, actually Theosophical Society does not take any part in politics. And that is because Theosophy believes that if we try to achieve political reforms without actually reforming the human nature, then it is just like putting new wine into old bottles. It does not help anything, because system is just made out of the people. And if people are not reformed, how is the system going to be reformed? If human nature is reformed, if men are made to feel and recognize in their innermost hearts what is their duty towards all men, then only everywhere where we find that the power is abused, or the policies are biased, or they are based on selfishness, only then they can be removed. If these men recognize their innermost duty, hmm, only then these biases or abuse of powers can be removed. And they will disappear by itself. If the men are reformed, then obviously all this is removed from the system by itself. So reform is needed at the level of human transformation. That is why Theosophy stresses on human transformation, transformation of every individual. When individuals are transformed, the whole system gets transformed. And actually speaking, members of Theosophical Society, they are free to follow any particular line of political thought. There is no compulsion on them and their actions in this regard, so long as they do not conflict with the theosophical principles. So you can follow any line of thought, any political ideology, but it should not interfere or it should not contradict the theosophic principles. Now, so theosophy is aloof from politics. What does that mean towards social reforms? Although theosophy stands aloof, politically aloof, but it expressly works for social reforms. That is what the Theosophical Order of Service is all about. Mental and spiritual development of humanity. That is what leads to social reforms. That is what Theosophy believes. And Theosophical Society, it is in thorough sympathy with all this kind of work. Every effort done is in this direction to reform the society. Theosophical Society stands with it. So there is a major thrust on education, a major thrust on training and development, a major thrust to develop the mind holistically, develop the body holistically. Towards this end, we know Theosophical Society takes so many steps. Every individual, I'm sure, other than these collective steps, individual members also help and work in their own way. So they are implementing the Theosophical principles practically in life. I will just give you a few major examples that the initiatives being done by the Theosophical Society towards social reforms as far as this training and development is concerned. The earliest school in 1894 was the Olcott Memorial High School, which was established. We know that now in 2019, the Adyar Theosophical Academy has been established. This is the school which is there on the campus of the international headquarters in the Besant Gardens, and it is following the ISC syllabus, Indian School Certificate Examination. So they are teaching that studies which will prepare students towards this certification. But it is a holistic development based on the theosophic principles with a lot of practical and community work. Similarly, most of you must be aware that in the Philippines, there is a Golden Link College. This institution has been established by the TS in Philippines and the Theosophical Order of Service in Philippines. So there is a major thrust on education. An educated mind will help you to unfold your higher self. Right? So theosophy and social reforms. The social reforms can happen. They are based or they are driven by four major theosophical principles. And these four theosophical principles, they form a golden chain. Each principle is a link in that chain. Right? See, we are talking about social reforms, and they are driven by which theosophical principles? So if we put these principles into practice, we bring about social reforms. The first principle is universal unity and causation. What do you understand by universal unity and causation? Unity means all of us, not only humans, but every being in the universe. In its highest sense, it is one. There is just one spiritual essence. Okay, the spirit is undivided and it is the same in all. So that is the universal unity. And this unity is also the cause of multiplicity in the universe. What affects one will affect all. So this is universal unity and causation. If we understand these principles, then we can work for the reformation or for the development what appears to us as multiplicity, because its root lies in unity. Okay. Next principle is human solidarity. When we understand unity, the highest spiritual essence, which is our unity, from there follows solidarity. Solidarity is this feeling of brotherhood, the support for one another, to understand that no individual can progress alone. It is the progress of the whole humanity. Right? Now, from that, how are these, when we come to multiplicity, how is it interlinked? How are all the parts connected? Through the law of karma and through the law of reincarnation, which we already saw in the beginning. And in this law of karma, we need to add one more aspect, that is the collective karma, that there is no isolated or individual part in the universe. Everybody is inextricably connected to the whole. This is the basis of collective karma. That is why when we put our principles into practice, when we work, when we serve, then the whole humanity progresses. And the last one is the law of reincarnation. So through law of reincarnation, it is very clear to us that it is not only about our present life. It is a journey. It is a journey of the real immortal man. Through this period of manifestation, that means manifestation of the entire universe. For what period has the universe manifested? Some Mahamanvantar. Okay, and through this period, repeatedly we are taking these personalities and we are journeying through this universe, and at the same time unfolding our real self. Okay, so what we do today, it will determine the progress of this cycle, and it is we who will reincarnate in the same cycle tomorrow. So our actions are affecting our future. We are going to be there in the future again. Right? So these are called the four links in the golden chain. This HPB has explained in her Key to Theosophy. These principles are the pillars of social cooperation, because when we understand this, We understand that we have to serve for the whole to progress. And that is why they drive social reforms to elevate all of humanity. Now, in this society, we see that there are large number of people, there are extremes. Large number of people are suffering misery, poverty, very poor physical conditions. Their mental and dormant faculties may have developed to a very low extent or maybe dormant. And on the other hand, on the other extreme, there may be people who are, living in material luxury. They are indulging themselves in selfishness. They are totally indifferent to the suffering of others. This is neglect of social duty. And this also creates the collective karma. We are also affected by it because it leads to the retardation of the progress of the entire society. So, how can we not be affected? Even we are affected. We cannot remain unaffected. Individual cannot separate himself from the race, nor the race from the individual. These are HPB's words in the Key to Theosophy. So service is so important, you can see it forms part of that collective karma. And if we don't do our duty, we are also affected. By developing our nobler qualities and by practicing this true brotherhood in our daily lives, by practicing human solidarity, we can elevate the entire human race. And also by helping in the development of others, we are not only fulfilling our karma, we are also helping them to fulfill their karma. Okay. So, okay, before we move on from this social reform, one important point which I want to mention. When we think that yes, we are doing our service towards society, how should we know that our action is right or not? For this, a very nice test HPP has suggested, and a very simple one, that it is left to the individual's judgment, which is your best action that you want to apply. But you have to see, observe for yourself. Will your proposed action, will it tend to generate true brotherhood? If yes, then your action is good, go ahead. Okay, so that is what we need to understand. Now, after the social reforms, uh, okay, this is a very important step. It goes on to talk about self-sacrifice. So it is not only about service to humanity, Theosophy goes a step further. It talks about self-sacrifice. That means give to others more than you can give to yourself. But this has to be done with discrimination. Otherwise, it can be harmful. So instead of describing what self-sacrifice is, let me just explain it with an example. We know the example of Mother Teresa. She sacrificed her whole life for these poor and destitute. There was a father Damien. He was a young man of 30 years, and for 18 years he lived among the lepers. He healed them, or he looked after them, served them. In the end, he contracted the same disease, leprosy, and he died. This was his highest self-sacrifice, to sacrifice your life. And it was not in vain, because he brought relative happiness to all those miserable suffering people. He gave them mental consolation and the strength to carry on through life. He was a true theosophist, and this was self-sacrifice. Now, in contrast to this, HPP mentions there were some missionaries who went to the South Sea Islands. South Sea Islands are part of the Pacific Ocean, Polynesia, Oceania, which we call. At that point in time, they were inhabited by the local inhabitants who were savages, who were cannibals. And these missionaries had gone there to teach them the gospel of God. But what happened to them? They were killed because those locals were savages and cannibals. So these missionaries sacrificed their life. But was their self-sacrifice any useful to those people? Not at all. So their sacrifice went in vain. Those savages, they continued as they were. These missionaries lost their lives. Of what use was the sacrifice? So Theosophy teaches us altruism, but it tells us not to be rash and not to make useless sacrifice. We have to use our higher reason on what kind of work we do. And while we are doing our work and duty for the society. We cannot neglect ourselves and our family. What does Theosophy have to say about this? Theosophy says that first and foremost, you owe the duty to the people whom you are personally responsible. So if you are married, you owe your duty to your spouse. If you have children, you first owe your duty to them. You owe your duty to your elderly parents, to your family. So work begins from home. You cannot shirk your responsibility and say that, no, I am doing service in the name of Theosophy. No. Moreover, you have a duty towards yourself. Develop your lower self by developing your higher self. We have to cultivate purity in our heart, mind, and action, and never be diverted from our duty by what others say. These things we have to implement practically in our life. Very easily, we get swayed by the opinion of other people, by what the world is saying. But we have to be strong if we are theosophists, if we are developing the qualities, we have to develop that voice of intuition, which helps us to think clearly and perform our duty. So, Theosophical Society does not have any rules which will force a person to become a practical theosophist. What you have to do practically, no, it is up to you. If you do this, you do it by your own desire. So now I'm coming almost to the end of my session. Before we conclude, I would like to talk about charity. What Theosophy has to say about charity. Theosophical idea of charity means personal exertion. Personally exert yourself, give your time, give your effort to somebody. Take a personal effect in the welfare of others. Have personal sympathy. Personally go and assist somebody to help them in their troubles. Show personal kindness. What it means is do the work yourself, not by proxy. Don't ask someone else, don't delegate the work to someone else to do it on your behalf. What was the work? Feeding the hungry, clothing the naked, sheltering the poor. Okay, we need to do it ourselves. Wipe the tears of the miserable before the sun can dry them. This is mentioned in the voice of silence. What it means? Act first and act fast. Act first and act fast. Don't let their tears dry by the sun. Wipe them. That means remove their misery. And while doing so, we have to be wary of one thing: pride. Pride is the swiftest way to our downfall. So, see, when we are implementing theosophic principles practically, we are doing service, we have to observe ourselves at every step. The head of pride should never be raised. That is our downfall. And above all, theosophy believes in feeding the soul, more than feeding the stomach. If you feed the hungry, he will naturally be filled with gratitude towards you. This feeling of gratitude is going to be more beneficial for that person because it will help his soul to grow rather than the helpful it is to for the person who's doing the charity. As compared to that, it is more beneficial for the person who's receiving that because his soul is filled with gratitude. So do practical deeds of charity to the extent possible, and above all, spread the teachings of theosophy. This is what is the real and substantial good, that is. Now, we as members, we should help in the work of Theosophical Society by studying, first of all, comprehending these theosophical doctrines so that we may teach others. We should use every opportunity to talk to others about what is theosophy and remove misconceptions about it. I always like to do this comparative study between the Sanatan Dharma and theosophical teachings. They can assist us in, we should assist in circulating this theosophical literature. So whether we buy it and study it or we lend our books to others, that is what we need to do. If there is any unjust attack on the society, some false accusations, we need to stand up in defense. So we need to understand what is true theosophy. And above all, we need to spread it by living a theosophic life. That is the highest duty. Make an example of your own life. So with these words, I would like to conclude my session. Thank you very much for patiently listening to this. And if you have any discussions or questions, we can take it up now.
Thank you, Vibhaji, for an elaborate and inspiring talk, illustrating the practical points for living the theosophy in our day-to-day life. Thank you very much. Anybody who would like to share or add something or have any question?
यश मैडम नमस्ते
Namaste.
जी। आपने गोल्डन लिंक का जो बताया की टू थियोसफी से
जी
यूनिवर्सल यूनिटी एंड कॉजेशन, तो कॉजेशन का और थोड़ा बताइए क्लियर।
अगर आप टीचिंग्स में डिटेल में जाएं तो व्हाट इज द फर्स्ट कॉज? First cause is that boundless immutable principle. It is the causeless cause and the rootless root. और वो कहाँ से शुरू होता है? जो जो थ्री फंडामेंटल प्रोपोजिशंस हैं, उसका जो पहला प्रोपोजिशन है, periodically the universe will manifest. Sorry, this is the second proposition. The first proposition is that boundless reality. The second proposition says that the universe manifests periodically. So that is the first cause. जब यूनिवर्स मैनिफेस्ट हो जाती है, उसके बाद ही ये सारा जो संसार का ड्रामा है एक तरह से वो स्टार्ट होता है. So that first cause, it will generate its effect. These effects become the cause for the next level of effect. So it is a domino effect. हर एक cause अपने effect generate करती है. So this is the chain of causation. तो वो जो unity थी, that one boundless all, which was the unity, it generates these causes, which ultimately manifests as the multiplicity of the universe. I hope that clarifies.
राइट, ओके, थैंक यू।
Thank you.
हाँ विभा जी, आपने बहुत ही सुंदर प्रस्तुत किया और प्रस्तुत
जी,
किया कि आपके कॉन्सेप्ट्स इतने क्लियर हैं, आपकी स्टडी इतनी डीप है कि शायद ही इस प्रैक्टिकल थियोसॉफी का कोई भी पॉइंट छूटा होगा। आपने शुरू से आखिर तक जिस धारा प्रवाह ढंग से इसको रखा है, रियली मैं मुग्ध हो गई हूँ और प्रार्थना करती हूँ ईश्वर से कि आप आगे ऐसे ही और प्रभावी वक्तव्य अपने समय समय पर देती रहे।
Thanks a lot.
God bless you. God bless you. God bless.
Thank you. Any questions or any point anybody would like to discuss? Rajiv ji,
Yeah,
that is all.
hello.
Yes.
Hello.
Yes.
Yes, madam. Namaskar. My name is Anil.
Namaste.
You were saying that they are the friends and the relatives, like they are continuing with us for the past many lives. Is it the same with the enemies also?
See, everybody generates their own cycle of karma. And as far as I was talking about, it was the bonds of true love. So, first of all, you need to understand those two words are very important. Bonds of true love. That force will exist only if it was real altruistic love. Okay, so they will definitely come into your life again. They may not come in the form of same relation. They can come in the form of any other relation. But yes, it is said that at different points in time, the same set of souls, they come together. So yes, and that is why it would equally apply to the people whom we call enemies, because we owe some karmic debt.
Okay. Okay. We owe some karmic debt. Okay. Okay. So we can also sort of balance our karmic debts with them, so that we no longer, I mean, we both no longer remain as enemies.
That bond is, yeah, that karmic bond is then cleared.
Okay. 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 There are other questions also. Something like when a man, because it is continuing from many generations, so between one birth and the next birth, where is that being? Where is he present? How is that being? Where is he at that point?
Oh, I think this will take another lecture in itself, because we need to understand the cycle of reincarnation. But in very brief, I can just tell you that the man will continue on physical, astral, mental. So after that, there are two states, Kamlok and Devachan. In Kamlok, your desire state is there. This Kamrup is created with the lower mental assimilating your desires. It creates a Kamrup which is perishable. Once it perishes, the ego or the higher self will move into Devachan, which is a state of bliss. It will remain there, reaping its fruit, the good fruit of its virtues. वो what we say कि कर्मों का जो फल मिलता है. So it is that period of bliss which he has earned due to his good karma. And after that period of rest, Devachan, once that period is over, he will be reborn. So he will come into another personality.
Thank you, madam. Thank you very much. Thanks a lot.
Most welcome.
नमस्कार विभा जी।
नमस्ते.
आपको बस ग्रेटिट्यूड पे करने के लिए मैंने फोन किया।
Oh no,
और
not
जैसा
at all. Not at all.
जैसे हमारे वेदों में लिखा है कि श्रवण, मनन और निधिध्यासन,
Right.
लिसनिंग, पॉन्डर ओवर एंड एसिमुलेशन।
Yes.
तो आपने तीनों ही लगता है श्रवण भी उतना किया है, पॉन्डर ओवर भी इतना किया है और उतना ही एसिमुलेशन भी किया है, तभी आप इतने क्लैरिटी के साथ प्रेजेंट कर पाती हैं। तो बहुत बहुत आपको धन्यवाद। और बस मैं एक बात ये कहना चाहती हूँ कि मैंने थियोसॉफिकल लिटरेचर में ही पढ़ा था कहीं कि जो हस्बैंड वाइफ, बच्चों, माँ बाप, भाई बहन जो नियरेस्ट एंड डियरेस्ट होते हैं, उनके साथ हमारे पास्ट लाइफ में बहुत हैवी कर्मा होते हैं। क्योंकि यदि हस्बैंड इल ट्रीट करता है मदर फादर या भाई बहन आपस में, तब भी हम उसको फॉरगिव कर देते हैं। उसको अपना, हमारी बहन है, हमारे पिताजी हैं, हमारे हस्बैंड हैं, तो वो हमको उसीलिए वो रिलेशनशिप में डालते हैं कि हम लविंगली फॉरगिव करके हम अपने पास्ट लाइफ के कर्मा को डाइल्यूट करें और एलिवेशन के हम जो है लैडर पर आगे चढ़ें। तो कहीं थियोसॉफिकल लिटरेचर में ये भी लिखा था कि जो डिस्टेंट रिलेटिव हैं और जो नियरेस्ट, जो हमारे ब्लड रिलेशन है, जिनके साथ किथ एंड किन रिलेशनशिप है, वो ऐसा प्लानिंग होती है जैसे आपने कहा ना कि एनिमी है, वो एनिमी नहीं है, वो हमारे कर्मा को जो है डाइल्यूट करके, हमारे कर्मा को खत्म करके हमको स्पिरिचुअल पाथ पर और आगे बढ़ने के लिए वो लेडर की तरह है। तो लगता है कि ये जो हमारे हस्बैंड बच्चों के साथ रिलेशनशिप होते हैं, वो ऐसे ही रिलेशनशिप है। कहीं थियोसॉफिकल लिटरेचर में ये पढ़ा था मैंने। बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद आपको।
वेरी नाइस, थैंक यू। Would anybody like to add something, or perhaps we can conclude? We have overshooted our time already.
Any question? Anybody?
बहुत सुंदर प्रेजेंटेशन था विभा जी, as usual. No words.
Thanks a lot. I'm so happy. I thank all of you who come to attend and let me share my thoughts.
Yeah.
हेलो, और किसी का अगर क्वेश्चन या कोई ऐड नहीं करना है तो अब हम इसको कंक्लूड करने के लिए कुछ अनाउंसमेंट करने थे। अभी नहीं है तो एक तो चीज ये अनाउंस करनी है कि नेक्स्ट टाइम से हमारा टॉक 6 से 7 हो जाएगा। शंकर लॉज का अप्रैल स्टार्ट हो रहा है और हमारा टाइम चेंज होके 6 से 7 हो जाएगा। तो इसको प्लीज जरा ध्यान से नोट कर लें सभी लोग कि हमारा टॉक जो है अब नेक्स्ट टाइम से 6 से 7 होगा। और नेक्स्ट टाइम ईस्टर कॉन्फ्रेंस है, इस वजह से 3 अप्रैल को कोई टॉक नहीं होगा। 10 अप्रैल को हमारा टॉक होगा, डॉक्टर राजीव गुप्ता जी लेंगे जो हमारे शंकर लॉज के सेक्रेटरी हैं। पातंजलि योग सूत्र के ऊपर कंटिन्यू करेंगे। एक तो ये चीज है। दूसरा, अब हम लोग ये बताएंगे कि हम लोग इसको रिकॉर्डिंग करते हैं और ये थियोसॉफी दिल्ली के नाम से हमारा चैनल है यूट्यूब का, उसके ऊपर रिकॉर्डिंग होती है। तो कभी भी कोई न सुन पाया हो तो पूरी तरह उसको सुन सकता है दोबारा से जाके। अब हम लोग क्लोज करते हैं मीटिंग को। राजीव गुप्ता जी कुछ और बताना है? राजीव जी।
No, thank you very much.
तो हम लोग क्लोजिंग प्रेयर करते हैं। सर्वे भवन्तु सुखिनः, सर्वे सन्तु निरामया, सर्वे भद्राणि पश्यन्तु, न कश्चित् दुःखभाग् भवेत्। ओम शांति शांति।